Imagine you are in Venice, just waking up. You open a window overlooking a narrow canal, where the pale sapphire sky shimmers on the water's surface. And the first thought that crosses your mind is not about love, trade, or politics, but a simple, almost innocent question. How much will this tiny cup cost me today? Because you are in 17th century Venice, where the price of coffee could measure your social standing more accurately than any badge or embroidered coat. Before you sit down, take a moment, hit like and subscribe if you truly enjoy these journeys, and tell me where you are watching from and what time you usually have your coffee. Today, we will dive into the story of a small black drink that set an entire city alight, persuading an entire class to pay handsomely for what seemed like an ordinary ritual. Now, dim the lights a little, turn on a small fan for that gentle background whisper, and let's begin. You are no longer just a viewer. You are the owner of a brand new cafe near the Rialto Bridge. You opened your doors just before dawn, placing the coffee grinder on the counter like a sacred instrument, gleaming as if it belonged in a magician's workshop. The coffee beans arrived yesterday aboard a ship returning from the east, packed in coarse linen sacks stamped with the mark of a merchant who never smiles. They say he bought the shipment from an Ottoman trader who did not utter a single word during negotiations, lest he raise the price unnecessarily. You open the sack, and the aroma bursts out like dark music, distant chocolate, a wisp of smoke, a hint of dried figure. You whisper to yourself, "This scent will pay my bills." Then you remember that half the city still believes coffee is satanic, that it seduces the mind and robs monks of sleep, as if sleep had ever been their companion. You smile, because you know a little secret. The more people call something satanic, the higher the demand for it becomes. The first customer walks in, a nobleman wearing a gleaming coat, dragging behind him a confidence just as polished. His face is hidden behind a mask with two eye holes. For in Venice, the season of masks lasts almost all year. He sits and gestures with a single finger, saying nothing. You read the sign like a fortune teller. He wants coffee that is very strong, heavy on the sugar, served in a small cup worth 2 days' wages for a tailor. With a calculated smile, you tell him, "We have a special house blend." He answers with half a smile, "I have a special blend named after my family. Make it worthy of the name." You laugh inwardly and begin the ritual. The water is heated but never boiled, like someone holding back before a confession. The beans are ground slightly coarse, to avoid turning the drink into a sharp bitterness. A cloth filter is rinsed with steam, the cup preheated so the coffee is not startled by unwelcome ceramic chill. Black drops begin to fall slowly, each one telling a story of a long trade route filled with fears, taxes, piracy, and bargaining. You place the cup before him like a confidential document. He lifts the mask slightly, takes a sip, coughs twice politely, then nods. Good. Not bad for a new face. And with that, he leaves, dropping a heavy coin on the table, as if casting a vote of confidence. Before you can catch your breath, a Catholic priest walks in, wearing a smile larger than his shoes. He approaches the counter as if arriving for a debate. In a calm voice, he says, "I've heard this drink brings men together to talk, and that is dangerous if their ideas are bad. You reply lightly. It also brings them together in silence when the coffee is excellent. Father. He laughs. Then pour me a cup that will silence my tongue, but make sure it's the blessed kind. You raise your eyebrows. Blessed. He answers with the confidence of someone in the know. Yes, someone has blessed it. Then winks. No need to get into details. You brew him a cup of medium strength. He drinks half of it and says, if all heresies tasted like this, councils would be much easier. You file that sentence away in your mind, perfect for an advertisement. Coffee, the delicious heresy that makes counsel shorter. Then the old sugar merchant walks in, placing a small sack on the counter. Sugar from Martinique. He says, sweet as a lover's whisper, but costly as a royal apology. You do the math in your head. You're caught between the iron hammer of coffee beans from the east and the sugarinville from the west. And suddenly, you realize that the little cup of coffee is an atlas, carrying on its shoulders an entire tangled economy. Beans from Ottoman ports, sugar from distant islands, ceramics from Italian kilns, silver from mountains no one in the cafe has ever heard of, and a customer with a name as long as his list of demands. You are learning quickly that success in Venice is not only about the quality of the drink, but about managing conversations, choosing the right moment for a brief laugh, knowing who should sit next to whom. One table that seats a minor ambassador beside a great poet might, in the same hour, produce both a small treaty and a grand poem. There is a man who comes in alone every day. He orders 2 cups. One he drinks slowly, and the other remains before him like an empty chair for an imagined friend. One day you ask, who is the second cup for? Without looking at you, he answers, for my silence. He doesn't drink much, but his presence comforts me. You think to yourself, here, coffee is not just a beverage, it is company. Sometimes for a real friend, and sometimes for an inner voice that needs its own chair. In the corner, a discussion begins about the Council of Ten's ruling on a new coffee shipment that arrived through mysterious means. Someone says, this batch is mixed with other beans to cut costs. Another replies, no, it's blended with stars. That's why we can't sleep afterward. You step in to explain that blending is an art, that some mixtures improve the flavor, and that cheaper does not always mean worse. But you know that in Venice, the truth never stops a rumor from spreading as fast as a gondola. An hour later, the entire city is talking about star-mixed coffee. 2 days later, a customer walks in and says, please, give me something a little less celestial. I have an early meeting. Every morning, small stories are written like a thin layer of foam on the surface of a cup. A young woman removes her mask for the first time over coffee and laughs, telling her friend, I feel like I've become a woman. A businessman promises to buy 3 full sacks if he likes the first batch, then disappears for 3 weeks because the sea decided to remind him who controls the schedule. A musician sits by the door, playing a repeating tune that feels like the heartbeat of the city. When you finish cleaning the tables, you sometimes find small scraps of paper left under the cups. Messages like, everything was bitter before this cup, or make me a coffee that stops me from writing long letters at night. By evening, the city changes. Masks grow bolder, Whispers grow louder, and coffee orders grow stranger. A man asks for coffee with a thin twist of lemon peel. A lady requests hers with only brown sugar. A poet orders coffee without coffee because he wants to trick his insomnia without betraying his image of himself. You make them what they want because you've learned a golden rule. Cafes sell more than drinks. They sell people a better version of themselves for 15 minutes. After that, they can go back to who they were, or keep pretending until they believe it. But paradise never lasts without a test. One morning, a small committee from the guild walks in, 3 men carrying ledgers and smiles that promise nothing easy. The eldest begins asking, "Where do you get your coffee beans? What's the blending ratio? Do you record quantities? What is your standard for the strength of the drink?" You answer calmly, as if reciting a bread recipe to judges who never eat bread. Then the last one asks the real question, "Do conversations here ever turn to matters they shouldn't? Meaning politics?" You smile and reply, "No one talks politics when the coffee is hot." He writes something down, starts to leave, then turns back to ask, "And do they stay once it cools?" You pretend not to hear, because you know that in this city, coffee is not just a drink. It is a ritual of observation. The clever ones are those who make everyone believe they hear nothing. One evening, a young sailor walks in carrying a small sack, wrapped with great care. He leans in and whispers, "This is a different kind of coffee. Try it. I'll wait outside." You pour a little, grind it, and the aroma is unfamiliar. A green note that recalls coastal grass. You brew a cup and taste it. The flavor is smoother, the finish longer. You ask the sailor, "Where is this from?" He answers while looking out at the water. "From a port that knew coffee neither before nor after this." And you understand that the secrets of coffee are like the secrets of the sea. No one ever tells the whole truth, but every grain whispers a part of it. Stories follow you. An old man says he first drank coffee in Istanbul when he got lost in the alleys, and an old sheik taught him to boil the water, then let it rest a moment before it touched the coffee, because everything beautiful needs a brief hesitation to be complete. A young woman from the upper class enters a public cafe for the first time with her maid. She orders a cup and pays with a trembling hand, then laughs half a laugh. "It seems I've committed a delicious sin," she says. You reply with half a smile, "Every city needs a few small sins to stay awake." Then comes the season of chocolate, a new rival that is nothing like tea in its shyness, nor wine in its tales. Chocolate is thick, sensual, slipping from the spoon like a long winter promise. Your competitor across the street opens a shop serving it in ornate cups, with a sign on the door, "Happiness from cacao, no need for many words." You swallow your envy with a sip of coffee and decide to answer with artistry. Coffee with a touch of orange blossom, another with a sprinkle of cinnamon, a third with a drop of orange flower water so faint it's almost invisible, yet it changes the mood. Customers come and say, "We want your coffee because it has stories." The chocolate is delicious, but it is silent. In a far corner, 3 men sit speaking in low voices. One of them taps the table with his finger each time he wants to make a point. "The cafe is dangerous," he says, "because it mixes the classes. The rich sit beside the poor, the merchant beside the poet. The second shakes his head. That's not dangerous. That's economics. When the poor hear the stories of the rich, they're driven to work. And when the rich hear the poems of the poor, perhaps they remember that life is not just a ledger. The third interrupts. You're both wrong. The cafe is dangerous because it makes time run too quickly. People no longer feel it. An hour becomes 2 minutes. That's a disruption to the cosmic order. You laugh inwardly because you know a simple truth. Coffee doesn't steal time. It gives it back, set exactly as it should be. Late one night, after the crowd has gone and only you, the musician, and the talkative sailor remain, a woman in plain black clothes walks in. She sits without a mask, gazing at the cups on the shelf as if choosing a poem. In a low voice she says, "A small cup, no sugar. I want something like your heart, simple, clear." You prepare it for her, looking away from her eyes, because you have not yet learned how to meet a gaze so unadorned. She drinks half the cup, then says, "My husband used to set the rhythm of his day by your coffee. Today, no one sets mine." Carefully you answer, "Sometimes, time slips from all of us." She smiles, leaves a coin that is more than enough, and walks out. And you remember that cafes are not only stages for prestige, they are also waiting rooms that never admit they are. A new spring arrives, bringing with it a shower of orders and taxes. You learn once again that coffee is hard work. Grinding, heating, cleaning, negotiating, smiling, listening, deliberate ignoring, calculated generosity. You also learn that coffee beans change from season to season, and that you must adjust the grind and the water's temperature to match their mood. Today's cup is not made the same way as yesterday's, and yesterday's customer may no longer be able to afford today's price. Yet you carry on, because something in the aroma tells you the world can rest on a small shoulder, if it is warm enough. The stories grow stranger. A poet insists the coffee writes his poems for him. He dips his pen into the cup, pulls it out, and reads silence. He accuses you of choosing the wrong blend for inspiration. A minor politician declares that coffee should carry an extra tax because it encourages debate. You ask, should we add a tax on speaking as well? He replies, no, only on minds that think out loud. You smile and pour him a cheap cup so his stay won't be long. Two young men invent a game. With every sip comes a small truth. They end up saying things that should have been said long ago, then leave laughing, better friends than when they walked in. One rainy evening, a man in travel-worn clothes walks in carrying a small wooden box locked with a brass clasp. This, he tells you, is an invention. It guarantees that every cup will come out exactly the same. The water pressure fixed, the brew time calculated. No need for guesswork. You touch the box as though touching a hesitant future. And where will we put taste? Then, you ask. He answers with confidence. Inside the box. You shake your head, thinking, there are some things that lose their soul the moment they are put in a box. You buy it from him only to keep it out of a rival's hands, place it high on a shelf as a curiosity, and go on relying on your ear to hear the bubbles, your eye to judge the surface color, and your heart to remember the right speed of the hand. From afar, You hear the story of a wealthy man who announced he would serve coffee to the entire city for free for one day, on the condition that everyone helped clean the streets afterward. People came in crowds, drank, laughed, then took up brooms and swept. That evening, someone wrote on a nearby wall, "Coffee made us act as if we loved each other for no reason." Your friend passes by, reads the line, and says, "That's the best coffee advertisement ever made without a price." You wish you could steal the wall and bring it back to your cafe. The city is always watching you. Some count your customers from afar, others measure the laughter, noting which stories keep being told and which have faded. There are also those who try to steal your recipes. You notice the new cafe at the end of the alley has started serving coffee with the same twist of orange peel. You joke with your waiter, "I suppose oranges multiply during the day." He laughs and says, "Or perhaps eyes have ears." It doesn't matter, because you've learned that a signature isn't in the ingredients alone. It's in your timing, in the way you serve, in the word you say at the precise moment it should be said, in the glance that tells you the customer wants a second cup without asking, and in your wisdom when you stop them from having a third so they won't grow to hate the second. One long night, after a little profit and even less loss, you close the door and sit alone. You pour yourself a cup with no audience and listen as the cafe breathes. The tables whisper. The cups nod their small heads. The spoons gleam like little fish. You remember the first day, how coffee was a riddle, and how it has now become a language, each cup a sentence, each layer of foam a punctuation mark. You smile at the thought and write it on a small slip of paper. Coffee is grammar and syntax. Then you turn off the light. The next morning brings a surprise. A small group of northern travelers, skin pale, eyes as blue as a cold lake. They enter the cafe cautiously, sit together, whisper among themselves. Then one raises his hand and asks in halting English mixed with half-formed Italian, "Do you have coffee like the one we drank in Constantinople?" You smile and reply, "We have something closer to Venice." They laugh. You add, "In Constantinople, they drink it darker. Here, we play on the edge. We want you to stay awake without losing your right to dream." One of them applauds for no apparent reason, and you decide that this applause is the best reward for your morning. Months pass, and you begin to master the art of invisible measurement, recognizing the faces of the addicts from their very first step, telling the intentions of passers-by from the way they hold their cup, hearing the troubles of merchants, the dreams of students, and the longing of widows. You learn that none of them are asking you for solutions. They want a drink that teaches them to be patient with themselves for 10 minutes. A man taps the table impatiently. You want to shout at him, but instead you pour him a glass of water first. He calms down. You tell yourself, water is coffee's friend, and yours as well. It teaches him not to ask for more than he can handle, and earns you a respect that cannot be measured in coins. News reaches you of a new cafe with strict rules. No loud talking, no big laughter, no lingering. The coffee there is served fast, like a military order. Some customers come to you and say, "Their coffee is good, but we come here because you have time." You realize then that what you sell is not just the drink, but the span in which a person makes peace with themselves, and that when people feel time belongs to them, it becomes generous in return. Then, as time always does, the city changes a little. Taxes rise. Some familiar faces disappear, others appear. You grow older. The hand that holds the spoon grows slower, but more precise. Your sense of smell changes, but learns to listen. Yes, smell can listen. The scent of coffee tells you when to wake the water and when to let it rest. One night, a young man comes in looking for work. He says he knows how to make coffee. You let him try. He pours too much water, grinds too fine, chills the cup until it feels like winter. You laugh and say, "It's all right. We don't make coffee here. We make small mistakes, then correct them." He smiles and asks for a second chance. You give him 3, because the city gave you more. The priest who once visited you now sends his assistant, a man who loves sugar more than his prayers. The old merchant who used to bring you sugar now sells children's stories about ships that never return. The musician who played 1,000 melodies vanished one day without goodbye, leaving behind a broken string and an empty chair. And so you learn that cafes are like books. Some pages end abruptly, others are folded with care, and both leave their mark on the finger. Still, some things never change. Dawn touching the wooden facade, the first sound of water heating, the movement of your hand when you decide it's time to stop, that look in the eyes of someone alone when you place before them a cup they know was made for them without their saying a word. And you, in the middle of it all, neither a small god nor a great magician, are simply a maker of warm moments in a city cold on the inside and outside at once. Years later, you will find yourself walking down a nearby alley, seeing a boy carrying a tray of tiny cups, running carefully as if holding a family's secrets. He reminds you of yourself. You want to call out, "Be careful. Don't fill the cup to the brim. Leave space for the air to breathe." But you stay silent because you know that every coffee maker must learn on their own the meaning of that small distance that saves the flavor from drowning. On a crowded Saturday, a foreign man steps into your cafe, dressed in a modern style that seems to unsettle time itself. He carries a small notebook, speaks in a language that is neither yours nor his, points at the cups and smiles. He says only one word, "History." You answer with one word as well, "Present." And it feels to you that between those two words lies a long bridge, because coffee truly is present history, a bean that has traveled farther than most humans, a continuous tale on the verge of becoming a small religion, complete with its own rituals, devotees, festivals, and delicious heresies. The city will grow old, centuries will pass. Your cafe will become a story, perhaps a small plaque on a wall. One day, a tourist will arrive, hundreds of years later, and take a photo where your chair once stood. They will read a plaque that says an old cafe once began here, serving coffee with a special blend. They will mispronounce your name, smile at their companion, and say, "Imagine people here once paid a lot for a tiny cup." Then they will return to their own time, drinking their coffee quickly to catch a train, never knowing that their very idea of speed was inherited from a city that thought coffee stole time, when, in truth, it was quietly giving it back to its owners. Before we close tonight, there is one last conversation that must happen between you and your cup. You say to it, "How many times have you saved me from saying something I shouldn't?" It answers with its familiar, knowing silence. "How many times have you made me believe I could start again after just 2 sips?" It responds with a faint glow along the rim. "How many times have you brought strangers together and made them friends for 5 minutes?" Its surface trembles as if smiling. You laugh and say, "All right then. I'll wash you now, and tomorrow we'll perform the play from the beginning." If you have made it this far and you are still listening, then you are someone with refined taste and a patience more beautiful than foam that knows how to stand. Take a deep breath, pour yourself some water, and think about a small drink that managed to teach an entire city how to speak, how to fall silent, and how to make peace with itself for 10 minutes each morning. And if you enjoyed the journey, there are more journeys ahead. Hit like and subscribe if you'd like us to continue, and tell me where you're watching from. And maybe, just maybe, I'll prepare you a cup made of words to match your taste in the next episode.